Hey family, welcome back to JESUSSAVES Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley M., and I'm so grateful that you're tuned in for episode 19, which is entitled Identify the Counterfeit. If you are new here, welcome. This is a faith-based podcast where we talk about Jesus and really emphasizing that Jesus saves. And if you are a returning listener, thank you so much for your support. And I'm very appreciative that you guys are here, and I hope you guys are having a blessed day and rest of your week. So, define what a counterfeit is. So, Google says that a counterfeit is made in the exact imitation of something valuable, important, with the intention to deceive. So, the counterfeit is not the real deal. It is essentially a knockoff. Like when you get like the fake name brand bags or shoes, they're not the real thing. They're like literally fraudulent. They're fake. So thinking about ways to identify the counterfeit, like for one, the counterfeit will feel rushed, right? It'll feel like you have to take this opportunity or else you're going to miss the opportunity. It seems too good to be true. So whether that be like a job opportunity that comes about and it's like the person's like, okay, like you got to hurry up and make a decision, be quick with it. And it's just like now or never. And when you feel rushed, it's kind of like that's not really the way God does things. If anything, God emphasizes patience and just waiting. So when something feels rushed, that should be kind of like an indicator like, I don't know if this is necessarily for me. And obviously, it's important to go to God in prayer and to ask God for discernment to be able to identify if the counterfeit, if this is a counterfeit or this is a real deal. Because oftentimes we see the counterfeit will appear before the real thing. And I think in terms of like relationships or friendships, like feeling like if someone is like forcing a relationship, like you got to be with me or else, or like this is what I want now, and doesn't give you an opportunity just to think about it or seek God for guidance. Those should be red flags for you, 100%. I think an important thing to realize is that the counterfeit will not seem like it's a counterfeit. Like it's gonna, like I said, the definition of the counterfeit is that it is going to be the exact imitation of something that is valuable meant to deceive you. So when you come in contact with a counterfeit, it's like you're not going to think it's a counterfeit. And I think the counterfeit, right, whether that be counterfeit opportunity, blessing, relationship, friendship, will try to get you to question or forget what God has already told you that He will do. And it will try to get you to question, like, what God has instructed you to do. Like, oh, are you sure God told you to do that? And we see that with Eve in the Garden of Eden when she was tempted by the serpent. And in Genesis chapter 3, verses 2 through 6, it says, "The woman said to the serpent, 'We may eat fruit from the trees in the garden, but God did say, you must not eat from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it or you will die.' 'You will not certainly die,' the serpent said to the woman, 'for God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil.' When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it." Now, this is really significant because Eve knew what God told her to do, right? God specifically told her that you can eat any of the fruits in the garden, just do not eat the fruit that comes from the tree of life. And the counterfeit, right, the snake that was trying to deceive her was like, basically saying, no, 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 like if you eat it, you're not gonna die, like da da da. Basically contradicting what the Lord said, but like Eve didn't listen to what the Lord told her, but instead was deceived and tempted by the serpent to eat from the fruit. And I think it's important to realize that she let the desires of her flesh win, right? It said that she saw that it looked good and wanted to eat it, right? She wanted to get that instant gratification. It was just like, it felt like, ooh, I desire it now because the serpent basically told me that it's good, so let me just try it. And that's not what God told her to do. That's the thing. Like, God will tell us to do a certain thing, and it's like we might act in our own will, our own ways, thinking that, oh, no, wait, if I do this, it's not bad. It doesn't seem harmless. She's probably thinking, like, okay, this is a fruit. Like, it can't be harmless. It can't be harmful. It's just a fruit. And we'll try to like rationalize or question, like, okay, like maybe I could do it. Like, maybe like it's technically not wrong. But no, you're still disobeying God. You're still sinning against God. And I think you have to come to the realization that the counterfeit is always gonna be less than what God has for you. Right? The Lord said that they can eat from all the trees in the garden, but it was just one tree that they were restricted from eating from. And the serpent was very deceptive and very cunning, right? Getting Eve to doubt and question what she already knew what was the truth. And I think it's important to come to the realization that when it comes to like attaining knowledge, right? So the serpent was like, if you eat from this tree, you'll gain knowledge and you be like God. It's important to differentiate between worldly knowledge and godly knowledge, right? The world will push that you can gain knowledge and understanding and insight absent of God, which is a lie. Um, in James chapter 1, verse 5, it says, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given to him. And I think we need to stop thinking that we know better than God, because we don't. We are limited in our understanding, we're limited in our abilities, and we need God to direct our steps, to order our path, and lead us. If we're led by our flesh, our own desires, we're going to always lead ourselves down the wrong path. And the counterfeit will come when you are alone and try to convince you to forfeit your blessings. The serpent came to Eve when she was alone by herself in the garden, vulnerable, right? And I think scripture tells us that like having godly community is important. Two is better than one, because if you fall down, you have someone else to pick you up. And the fact that she was alone, she didn't have someone to be like, no, no, God didn't say that. Like, no, 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 snap out of it. She was by herself. She was vulnerable to being deceived, to being attacked, right? Because she was by herself. And I think it's important to realize, like, if you're in a season where like you're locking in with God, you're focusing on doing your calling, focusing on just living a life that is pleasing to God, the counterfeits are going to come. They're going to come when you're trying to be focused, when you're trying to do the right things, when you're trying to go deeper in your walk, to get you distracted, to get you to walk off the path that God has for you. But you have to literally seek the Lord for wisdom and for discernment to make sure that you are making the right decision. There are consequences for taking the counterfeit, right? For being disobedient, for being led by your flesh, and succumbing to the counterfeit, right? In the Garden of Eve, we see in Genesis chapter 3, verse 16, it says, to the woman, he said, I will make your pains in childbearing very severe. With painful labor, you will give birth to children. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. And I don't know if anyone here is a mother, but like childbirth, that is so intense. Like, I hear the stories from like my friends, family members, how it just feels like an excruciating pain. Like when you have the contraction, when you're getting ready to like give birth, it is pain like no other. Like, this is painful. And it just goes to show that like it just takes one thing to change everything, right? This action of Eve, eating the forbidden fruits, disobeying God, being deceived, led to a domino effect of sin entering the world, corruption, murder, everything that's not of God. It just turned everything upside down. And you have to understand that there's consequences for your action. There's consequences when you disobey God. There's consequences when you're out here acting on your own will. And she was punished. Not just she was punished, everybody was punished. All women experience painful childbirth. Like, it's no joke. So we have to be very discerning. We need to seek God and be able to identify the counterfeits, because the counterfeits are going to seem like it's all nice and good and not so bad. It's going to come packaged up really nicely. But we have to realize that the enemy is not going to come showing up in a scary costume. He's going to try and seem like, oh, this is good. He's going to try and normalize all the things that are not of God, but we have to seek God for discernment, or else we're going to be led astray. We got to seek the Lord. Also see counterfeits and impatience when we look at Sarah and Abraham and Hagar. So if you guys are not familiar with the story of Sarah and Abraham, so Sarah and Abraham were very old in age and they desired to have a child. And because they were so old in age, you know, Sarah was really kind of like doubting, like, man, like, is it too late? Like, am I going to be able to like have a child? So she took it upon herself to have their slave Hagar sleep with Abraham so that she would conceive a child and, therefore her husband will have a son and that will be their son. And I think what's important to realize is that, like I said before, the counterfeit will come before the blessing, right? This happened in Genesis 16, verses 4 through 5. It says, he slept with Hagar, and she conceived. When she knew she was pregnant, she began to despise her mistress being Sarah. Then Sarah said to Abram, you are responsible for the wrong I am suffering. I put my slave in your arms, and now that she knows she is pregnant, she despises me. May the Lord judge between you and me. Now, God never told Sarah nor Abraham to have Abraham sleep with the slave so that she'll get pregnant. This is a consequence of their actions operating outside of the will of God. Now, because of this, because Hagar became pregnant, she's basically like, I'm pregnant, you're not, ha ha ha. Like, you got all this drama and all this tension that's going on between Sarah and Hagar because of this. And Sarah's like to Abraham, this is all your fault. Like, look what you got going on. And it's like, God did not intend for this little drama, love triangle situation to happen. Sarah took it upon herself because she thought that she knew what was best, because she's like, I'm old. I got to make sure that my husband has a son and we got a line going. But we have to realize that, like, when the Lord told them that they're going to conceive a child this time next year, that was the promise. And Isaac, right, is a son of the promise. Like, he was literally the promise. Now, the son that Abraham and Hagar had was Ishmael. He wasn't the son of the promise, right? And it's like, that was not who God was like, okay, this is going to be who your lineage generation is going to come from. He wasn't the son of the promise. The promise was Isaac. And Sarah probably thought, like, okay, like, if I do this, like, I'm securing the line, everything's going to be good. But no, that caused more problems within her marriage, problems with her and Hagar. And there's just a whole bunch of drama that God was like, I didn't tell you to do that. Now, in Genesis chapter 18, verses 10 through 14, right, God is revealing to Abraham and Sarah that she's going to conceive a child. Mind you, Sarah took it upon herself to have Hagar sleep with Abraham in Genesis 16, thinking like, okay, this is going to be the son, right? The counterfeit will come before the promise. In Genesis chapter 18, verses 10 through 14, it says, I will return to you about this time next year, and your wife Sarah will have a son. Sarah was listening to this conversation from the tent. Abraham and Sarah were both very old by this time, and Sarah was long past the age of having children. So she laughed silently to herself and said, how can a worn out woman like me enjoy such pleasure, especially when my master, my husband, is also so old? Then the Lord said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh? Why did she say, can an old woman like me have a baby? Is anything too hard for the Lord? Now, this is so important because this just reminds you that, like, God's words are final. If God said he's going to allow you to conceive a child in a year, it's going to happen. If God says that you're going to be married in 5 years, it's going to happen. If God says that you're going to get that house, get that degree, if God says that you're going to pursue this career, it's going to happen. God is faithful to fulfill all of his promises. I think it's so important to realize that when we or in seasons when we're waiting and it's like, God, when? We start to doubt. But I think it's important to remind yourself of God's track record, what he's done for you in the past, right? He shows up in the nick of time. And Sarah was just looking at her current situation. She's like, I'm an old woman. My husband is an old man. How am I possibly going to bear a child? Like, we're already old. And I think at this point, Abraham was like 99 years old. Like, that's old. You know what I mean? But nothing is impossible with God. And God does great and mighty things. And when he does these great and mighty things, he gets the glory. You can't attribute it to your own understanding, your own wisdom, your own knowledge. Literally, it's all because of God. God's will is going to prevail. And like I said, Isaac was the son of the promise. Ishmael was the counterfeit. He was not going to receive the blessings that was literally meant for Isaac. And because Sarah chose to have, Hagar sleep with her husband, it caused a lot of problems. She was kind of like, dang, like now there's drama. But God did not intend for that to happen. That was not what God told her to do. We have to trust God. It's on the way. Your blessing is on the way. Your breakthrough is on the way. Your healing is on the way. You just have to be still and know that God is there, that he is Lord, that he is going to do exactly what he says he is going to do. Discernment is so necessary because we can easily be deceived thinking that, okay, this might be it. But like if we operate on our own understanding, we're going to be led astray. We need to seek the Lord and ask God to direct us, to lead us, and just really test the spirit, because when you think about the fruits of the spirit, right? Peace, love, joy, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. We need to start thinking like, is this giving the fruits of the spirit? Because if something feels rushed and unnatural and forced, that's not fruit of the spirit. Fruit of the spirit is patient, right? If something is just like, it's just causing a lot of problems and dissension and just there's a lot of like anger and hostility, are those fruit of the spirit? No, it's peace, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. And like I said, the counterfeit will, play on your desires, specifically the desires of the flesh, right? And you can't be led by the flesh. We have to be led by the spirit. So when you think about the fruit of the spirit being self-control, being led by the flesh is not operating in self-control. So being able to distinguish when something's from God and when it's not is so important, and necessary to avoid you from being deceived. Now we also see this counterfeit versus blessing with Jacob and Esau. So if you guys are not familiar with the story, Jacob and Esau were twin sons of Isaac. And essentially, Jacob was favored by his mother, Rebecca. And he tended to be, he wasn't really like an outdoorsy person. He tended to be in the house. He was kind of like a chill dude. Esau was a big, hairy guy. I believe he was hairy, like in the womb. And he was like a hunter. He was the one that was always hunting and going and getting game and all the things like that. And he was favored by Isaac. So because Esau was the first son, he was entitled to his birthright, getting all the blessings and all the rights because he was the first son. But in this story, we see how Jacob essentially convinced his brother to give up his birthright for a bowl of soup. Hearing that is a little wild. It's a little wild. So let's kind of get into the story. So this is coming from Genesis chapter 25, verses 29 to 33. And it says, one day when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau arrived home from the wilderness exhausted and hungry. Esau said to Jacob, I'm starved. Give me some of that red stew. This is how Esau got his other name, Edom, which means red. All right, Jacob replied, but trade me your rights as the firstborn son. Look, I'm dying of starvation, said Esau. What good is my birthright to me now? But Jacob said, first you must swear that your birthright is mine. So Esau swore an oath, thereby selling all his rights as the firstborn to his brother, Jacob. That is wild. So essentially, Esau is hungry, right? He's like, I need food. I don't care what I got to do, what I got to sell, just give me that bowl of soup. And that's so unfortunate because Esau forfeited his blessing for a bowl of soup. He was literally being led by his flesh. His flesh was like, I need to eat. Give me that food. Give me that food. Give it the birth. I do what you got to do. And it was really that instant gratification that he was going to get. He was going to fulfill that hunger that he felt, that physical hunger. But he wasn't thinking about the repercussions. And the counterfeit blessing is temporary, not eternal. Okay. Now, this birthright blessing that Esau had, that he was entitled to, it was going to be an eternal thing. It wasn't going to be a temporary thing. Now, him trading that for a bowl of soup that once he eats it, the soup is gone, that's that instant gratification, temporary blessing, temporary fulfillment. And it's so important to realize that the counterfeit, right? It's not going to be the real deal. It's going to be temporary. It's not going to last. But what God has for you is going to last. It's going to be solid. And when God has something for you, it just happens naturally. It doesn't feel forced. You're not rushed. God will orchestrate it where you're at the right place at the right time to meet the right person, to have access to this particular opportunity. Like, God is so intentional in the way that he does things. And he's so strategic in the way that he does things. And the counterfeit is going to be the exact opposite of that. There's not going to be peace with that. There's going to be an internal battle. You're not going to feel at peace. You're going to feel unsure. You're going to be constantly questioning. I don't know. I don't know. But when it's from God, there's like a peace that you have, a peace that surpasses all understanding. And it's so unfortunate that some people, right, forfeit their blessings for the counterfeit. Esau, firstborn son, forfeited his blessing just for a bowl of soup to fulfill his flesh, to fulfill his hunger. He was not thinking about the implications for his future, for his generation. He was just thinking about the here and now. And the counterfeit, like I said, it's going to be that instant gratification. You're going to fulfill the flesh. You're going to feel good here and now, but you're not going to think about the repercussions of that. So discernment is key, y'all. Discernment is key. Ask God for wisdom. Ask God for guidance. You know, don't fall into the trap of believing the counterfeit is the real deal because you're lonely, because you're tired of waiting, because you just want to fulfill the desires of flesh. No, trust in the Lord and he will direct your path and order your steps. Have faith and believe that all of God's promises will come to pass. God is faithful to do everything he says he's going to do. So that was it for today's episode. I pray that it blessed you. I pray that it reaches the ears of whoever needs to hear it, to trust God, be discerning, identify the counterfeits, and remember, Jesus saves. Don't fall for the tricks of the enemy with the counterfeits. Until next time, stay encouraged, stay equipped, and stay rooted in Christ. God bless.